Hey everybody, this is a quick video just giving you some tips and tricks for the lab, the exercise 5, lab number 1 using ArcGIS Online. So first I'm here in ArcGIS Online, and what I recommend you start with first is this link that I provided, which is a link to the Living Atlas, which the Living Atlas is really just an authoritative list of data and information that's coming from a lot of different sources. So peruse the data that's here and see if there's anything you're really interested in. You can go across different boundaries. You can look for different kind of demographic groups of people. And I'm looking at a filtered list of data, so let's do that. So there we go. There's current wildfires, there's imagery, traffic, storms, earthquakes. If I hit people, population data, information related to demographics, race, national shelter system, open shelters. So there's a ton of great data here. And the point is really just to take a look, to let you think about kind of what you want your map to be about. And again, you need to select 2 layers from this. So let's get started and I'll show you what I mean. So if I come to the map, you have the ability to add data from multiple different sources. And what we're going to do is hit add, and you're going to search across the Living Atlas. So again, it needs to be 2 layers of information from there. And your map can be anything you want it to be. For the example that I'm going to build out, I wanted my map to be about poverty in New Orleans. Something I know is you can search for ACS, which is the American Community Survey, and this is data for the US. There's also population data for around the world. And I'm going to do ACS poverty data. And I'm going to add in some data for New Orleans, or for the US in general. So I click add and it drops that information into the map. The other data I wanted to add into this map is related to flooding and flood risks. So I'm going to again search across the Living Atlas, search, and I'm going to say FEMA, and there's a bunch of FEMA flood data here, so FEMA flood hazards, and I'm going to add that to the map as well. You can see here there's 2 different kinds of layers, and we didn't dive into this really yet. It was in kind of the intro video. There's an imagery layer, which is raster data, and there's a feature layer, which is vector data. So in this case, I'm going to add the vector data because I can filter it a little bit easier. I'm going to hit add. So now what do I have in the map? I've got poverty data, and I've also got information related to flooding. And so the purpose of my map is I want to paint a picture of how populations could be impacted by flooding. In particular, I want to show how populations that are in poverty could potentially be impacted. So I'm going to zoom into New Orleans, and the second step of this exercise is to modify the symbology for your map. And I want you to do a couple different things here. On the left-hand side, you can change your base map. There's a lot of different options. It again depends on the story you're trying to tell and how you're trying to visualize your data. In this case, I'm going to pick that dark base map, and you'll see why in a minute, and close that base map pane. If I go back to my layers, you can also change the order of these. So I'm going to just drag that one layer and bring it to the top. And now here's probably the most important part, is you need to change the symbology for some of these layers. And so for this first layer, which shows the poverty, there's a little drop down here which selects, there's some like sub layers kind of hidden in here. See, county, state, and also tract, which is a smaller kind of geography. And I'm going to select that, and after I pick this, over on the right-hand side, it gives me some options for that data set. And so what I want to do is I actually want to change the styles for how this data is going to present. So if I click here for the style, I can modify this. And I'm going to get rid of this. Right now you can see in the key here, the legend, telling me that there's a color that is telling me the darker the color, kind of the higher that percent population, then the bigger the circle, the more people. So I want to get rid of that kind of circles. I just want to have the percent population. And I X and get rid of that. And now the symbology is going to modify to reflect kind of that choice I just made. And so rather than having just the kind of counts and amounts here, what I want to do is just have circles that are bigger depending on, you know, the population that is in poverty. I'm going to select this. And so now what are we seeing? Percent of the population whose income in the past 12 months is below poverty. Now the bigger the circle, the higher that percentage. You can see here the biggest circle is saying almost near 100%. And for my map right now, I'm then going to modify this. So I want this symbol to not have any color in it, but let's make the outline of it white, and let's make it a little bit thicker. So what did we just do? We just created a map that added in those layers, that data, and I didn't use the symbology that was provided to me. I wanted to just show the symbology that I am trying to highlight. I'm trying to show the areas that are, you know, highest poverty and their impact in flooding. So we just modified that poverty data set, and now I'm going to do the same thing for the flooding. For the flooding, rather than showing the symbols for all of this data, something else you can do if you want to here is also filter the information. So right under the styles is a little option to say filter. So I'm going to say filter and add an expression. And here are all these drop downs of different fields that are in the data set. And a lot of these I don't even know what those mean. But if at any point you want to see, you know, what data is actually in the tables there, you can go to your layers over here and then look at that table. So some of these codes, again, I don't know what some of these codes mean, but as I scroll over, I can see what I actually want to grab is this flood zone subtype, which is letting me know kind of how that zone is categorized. So now in my expression, I can say, I want to get that flood zone subtype, and then just select a certain record there or a certain attribute. So I'm going to say flood zone subtype is 0.2% annual chance of a flood hazard. So all of those areas in purple right now have a higher chance of flooding. I'm going to hit save. My layer is now going to filter, so those kind of, that purple and those other colors are going to fade away from the map now in a second. And the other thing I can do is go change my color for how this is getting drawn or how it's getting represented. So instead of that lighter purple color, sometimes it's nice to have a blue represent water. So I'm going to change the color to be a blue to show that is more likely to flood. Close this, and then center my map on the area that I'm trying to highlight this story for. And in this case, it's New Orleans. So what did we just do? So I grabbed 2 layers of information. Can be anything, anywhere you want in the world. Go crazy with this, tell some kind of fun or crazy story. But again, it has to have a purpose, and it has to have a clear way that it's telling that story. In this case, I wanted to show the relationship of flooding to poverty in New Orleans. And so hopefully I'm doing that pretty well. You know, the bigger the circle, the more poverty, and those areas in blue are showing that are more likely to flood in the city. And we're seeing some strong relationships here between, you know, higher areas and poverty look like they're maybe more likely to flood. What else? You need to modify the symbols or the symbology. You have the ability to apply filters like I did here, and then make sure you save. And I'll give my map a name. I'm going to call this New Orleans Poverty and Flooding. And then after you've saved your map and after you've finished, not the most important thing, but please remember to share it. This little button here clicks share, and then make sure you share this with everyone, or at the least share it with the organization. This will make sure that we will then all be able to see the map and see the links. So that's it. Quick review of this exercise. Hopefully that helped you at least get started on it and understand, some of the things you can do with this. Again, have fun with it. And any layers that are inside the Living Atlas, again, the click down here, are fair game. So find anything and just make sure you modify the symbology to make it your own.